especially Course in Miracles questions, and as they might relate to your own embodiment or your own working with it. It's kind of a great time to ask those questions, and we send the replay. So anybody, if there's something that comes up with people missed, we can always send them to the replay. What do you think, Dov?
Sure.
Should we use this time to ask people?
I mean, participation is always encouraged. I mean, full participation. I mean, that's, yeah, I mean, I'm an advocate for actually getting included in the totality of the sharing. I mean,
Yes.
that's how you know that you are giving what it is that you want to receive, giving and receiving what you're saying.
Well, we're a small group here. Does anybody have any questions about something that doesn't make sense? Or
I have a question. Oh, you do too. Go ahead.
No,
Maybe
ladies.
they're the same.
Good, ladies first.
One of the things that I've been trying to find in the Course in Miracles is what it says about grief.
mm-hmm.
Grief is a subject that's been coming up a lot with friends, with myself. The idea of is just, what does the Course in Miracles say about that? I know there's something in there. I can't find it.
Well, tonight is about that, by the way.
Okay.
We are going to be showing a 5-minute video by Donald Walsh, who says, why grieve? Death is not real. So that's part of tonight. And I want you to know that that's really how this group called Join Us for Present Happiness started out, because people do grieve. And of course, all grieving is of the ego. The ego says, oh, death is real. Somebody is lost. I can't get them back. That's the ego speaking to us.
Okay.
So both Dov and I have our stories with dealing with beloveds that have no longer in this world bodies. And my background is as a psychotherapist. And so grief, you probably know Elizabeth Kubler-Ross and the stages of grief that everybody knows about. And part of my TEDx talk is to talk about the fact that grief and those stages have become prescriptive. We think that's part of life, those stages, we need to go through them. And the fact that acceptance is at the bottom of denial, anger, bargaining, and then acceptance, it appears as though acceptance happens because of those, but that was not my experience. My experience, and Dov was saying what A Course in Miracles says, my experience was at first when my daughter passed, I went into those, basically the shock, which I think the shock is not a stage. I think the shock happens as a result of the circumstances changing. It has to. You can't just say they were my daughter yesterday and now they're not in the body and not have feelings and so on. It's what we add onto the shock. Oh, she's gone. Okay. What does that mean? Oh, I won't see her here again in the same way. So I think the shock is the body. And even though people say the body isn't real, I think we're meant to be embodied. We're not meant to think it's us, meaning I awareness, meaning I God, meaning I oneness. We get confused. So all I want to say about grief really here is that my experience was the stages kept me from spirit. The stages kept me from love. The stages, think of it, denial, no, bargaining, if only this and then that, depression, you're all turned into yourself.
Anger is part of it too, right?
Yes, anger's there too. Very true. And when we're in a fight with those things, when we're all of those are a fight with what is. It shouldn't have happened. I'm mad it happened. You know, I'll deny it happened, bargaining and so on. But there is so much love always present. And those stages keep us from that. So we don't want to deny the stages. If one has a feeling, Suzanne, let's acknowledge the feeling and then not add paragraphs to it. The feeling only lasts 90 seconds in our brains unless we add to it. There's nothing wrong with feelings. We're meant to be sentient. We're meant to have feelings, to touch a stove and it go, oh, that's hot. I'll pull my hand away so I won't get burned. But if we make the stages or the feeling into our gods, if you will, into idols, the Course says a lot about idols, right, Dov?
Yes, of course, yeah. And what Rosalind is saying is, if you believe in something, you're going to keep on pondering on it and say, oh my God, this has happened, because that's your belief. If you believe that death is real, then you have reason to grieve. And you know, everyone has their own length of grief. In my own mother's case, she grieved for 35 years to the end of her life, literally when she lost her oldest son in World War II. So
and you always say she was cut off from the children. Other children, she was cut off from love. She was cut off from spirit.
Yeah. She actually thought that God took her angel and left the less than angels with her. So you know, that is how she saw God. And by the way, she was a very holy woman. She spoke to God in her kitchen all the time.
Mm-hmm.
But she would say things like, God, why did you do this to me?
Yes. So the stages of grief are in a way akin to suffering. And we need to feel, but we don't need to suffer. I don't know if that relates to what you were coming with, Suzanne.
Yeah, it does, because I think sometimes that the suffering part is something that, again, sort of like we make that choice.
Yes.
We're not supposed to suffer.
Sometimes it's ignorance in the sense that we don't know we're doing it. So that's the benefit of these kinds of conversations, is that you can play with it. And maybe we should do, welcome everybody. We got started with questions and answers, and
that's fine.
Yeah, it's fine. Okay. Should we do just a few minutes of a short meditation before we put the movie on, just to embody what we're saying? So let's everybody take a feeling that you have. Maybe it's grief, maybe it's anger, maybe it's denial, maybe it's bargaining, but maybe it's just small upset about something. And let's go underneath it. And how do we go underneath it? How do we go underneath it and find the oneness that's always present? Well, you know, there's that metaphor that's often used in spiritual circles about the movie screen and the movie. So just for a moment, picture your TV screen, and it has an edge on it. And then you watch the movie or the TV show you're watching. And if you don't own a TV, you can just imagine somebody doing it or you doing it. And when you're watching the show, you don't notice the edges of the screen. And you don't remember that there's a screen behind holding up the TV show. And there's something in our human brains, following up with what Dov was saying about beliefs, that if we believe something, our brains will prove that we're I'm taking care of that. Our brains will prove that we're right. So it will show us evidence of why we're right or why we should be angry. But let's now embody the screens ourselves. Let's, instead of being the movie, the TV show, just for now, let's be the screen. The screen never goes away. The screen is there when we turn off the show. The screen is part of the wholeness of life if we use it as a metaphor for who I am. So that's the way that oneness is always under the emotion. If we look for it, we will find it. It's called the reticular activating system. I'll repeat it later if you want to know it, but our brains are good at finding whatever we're looking for. So, how does that help us with suffering? If we know that by adding to a feeling and stoking it with paragraphs, we'll get suffering. But if we are looking for the oneness of the screen that I am, we will indeed find that. Our brains are wired for that. It's just that in the past, we have been taught not to look for it or to only notice the movie of our lives, the Dov movie, the Rosalyn movie, the Susie movie, and so on, Suzanne movie. And right now, let's just go back a little further and rest as awareness. Rest in I awareness. We've been saying that in some of my classes. How does that make a difference if you don't just refer to yourself as I, but you say I awareness? That is what you are. And that is what the Course says. That's how it intersects with the movie that we're going to see in a few minutes. So when you're ready, come back to the room. And if you want to share anything about what just happened, we're happy to hear that. And then we'll go to the agenda for tonight. Was that helpful to anyone? I know my words are not always listened to, but there were some things in there, like you're the screen, just to remind you, you're the screen, not the drama of your life. You're always there. I awareness am the metaphor of the screen. I'm there before the movie and I'm there after the movie. And I'm included in the movie. The movie couldn't be there of your life without awareness. Awareness is the holding of you. There is no separate you. We are one. We are one with the one. Dov, do you have anything to say?
No, I thought that was a beautiful, beautiful show. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Anybody else have anything to say?
I sometimes forget about the screen, so thank you.
Yes, you're welcome.
Yeah.
And your reticular activating system, if you start looking for the screen, you will find it. Lynn, please go ahead.
Thank you so much. I just found out that my cholesterol is 363, and I don't. The only animal products I eat is fish and eggs, and now I have to give up the eggs. And I'm not as upset as I thought I'd be, even though I would love my eggs during the day. But it's much better to let go of things.
Yeah, think of that tug of war. And you even put eggs on the other side.
I also wrote a poem
All right.
today, if you'd like to hear it.
We would love to hear it.
I appreciate that. I was having these thoughts and I figured, let me put it down in a poem instead of letting the thoughts drag me away. So here it goes. Chastised by thoughts that spew shoulds, distracted as they come as many. Horizontal plane has a limit. I go to more as I know. Now is seen despite old habits. I picture butterflies in their place. I am in flow of altogether. Doubt cannot swim in love. More and more will be revealed.
Wow,
Thank you.
that's beautiful.
Thank you.
Thank you,
John, did
Lynn.
you have something to say? Did you have your hand up? John, was that you? Rico.
I just want to say to my dear sister Lynn, as long as we don't let go of the screen, we're going to be just fine.
Amen, Brother Rico.
Okay.
Amen.
You know, I'll just share my sugar story. About 3.5 years ago, actually longer, I was the thinnest I'd ever been because I'd had brain surgery. And I didn't know what I could have been eating, but my sugar was way up. And they said, change your diet, blah, blah, blah. So for the last couple of years, I go in and out of watching what I eat. And then I probably don't succeed because I also believe I should be able to eat anything I want if I don't judge it. And so I go back to eating everything I want. Then I got completely distracted from food. And for the first time, paying no attention and not trying to do anything with my sugar. The sugar is below normal. I mean, like perfect, like just. So it's not about me. It's sometimes not making a story out of these numbers that they give you. And we all fall into that when you, somehow the doctors can break our understanding of who and what we are, just those visits, but you know, you can remember after you forget. Yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead, John.
Rosalind, just who and what we are. That's what you just said. And then that came to me in your meditation, because basically at the end of it, when we come to see the screens and what's on it, and that's who and what we are there. And as it relates to the grief or the suffering, or for me, victimhood stories, which I got a big unraveling today. It's always, for me, it comes to that question mark, is that story versus who and what you are. And that's what, you know, that's you asked me for awarenesses, and that's what came to you, and thank you for that.
Yes.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you. That's beautiful.
Yeah. I want to reiterate that if you're doing A Course in Miracles, the main focus of a course is to be able to be discerning of your thoughts that are coming through you. Any thought that is fearful or grieving is always an ego thought. Lesson number 5, which was Ken Wapnick's #1 favorite lesson, I am never upset for the reason I think. Basically, the reason we go into grief or fear or upset or any kind of ego reaction is that we're listening to a thought system that is not our original thought system, and we believe it's true.
Mhm.
So even though lesson, I think it's 163, says there is no death, that's a lesson in the course. There is no death. Well, there is no death. The Son of God is free. Lesson 163. The thought system of the ego is all based in the idea that you're born as a body, you live a certain number of years, and you die. If you believe in that system, you're believing in the ego's thought system. The whole idea of the course is to literally, as Amy Anderson right here can tell you, is to forgive yourself for the belief in something that is not real. I did put on in the chat something from, I think it's section 27 of the teacher's manual, which is about, is there death? And this is one of my all-time favorite lines. It's right down at the end of the chat. It says, and no one asks if a benign creator could will this, to see his children die. No one asks, would a loving father want to see his children die? That's obviously the ego's thought system about a God who doesn't love you. The whole world is basically an attack on the love of God. And there's only two emotions. One is love, which is our true emotion, and the other is fear. The fear I'm going to die, the fear that my best friend's going to die, the fear that my best friend left already and I'm all alone. Those are the ego's thoughts. So when in lesson 5, I am never upset for the reason I think I'm upset, because I'm listening to an insane thought system of guilt that drives me insane. And then his other favorite lesson was lesson 34. I can choose peace instead of this. So if you find yourself believing in thoughts that have to do with grief or a lack or loss or separation, say, I can choose peace instead of this. The goal of this course is peace. You don't have to understand everything I'm saying or anything that anybody said. You want to choose the peace. The peace is always your true identity. I just wanted to share that.
Beautiful. Okay. Shall we show the movie now?
Yes, please.
Okay.
This is Donald Walsh.
It doesn't exist. It can't occur. Death is a fiction. It doesn't exist. It can't occur in the experience.
My goodness. What happened? My goodness, what happened here? Okay, we'll start over.
In the experience of who you are, which is a sacred.
No, lay down.
Could you mute yourself? Who?
Lay down.
Wait, before you scroll away, you need to hear this.
Oh my goodness.
Republicans across the country are moving fast to enact massive voter suppression laws and bring about Jim Crow 2.0.
You can ask Skip.
I need you to join me in the fight to protect voting rights from this assault. This assault on our right to vote by signing this petition before the deadline closes. Republican lawmakers have already introduced hundreds of voter suppression bills.
You can skip it.
Yeah, but it's not showing you
just achieved. And let me be clear.
Okay, let's go out.
Couldn't be any higher.
I'm going to start.
We want to see your name on this petition to protect voting rights before tonight's deadline. So please sign your name now and stand up against Jim Crow 2.0.
I vote for Amy Anderson.
That is very funny. Okay, we're going to start over. It was all worked out beautifully, and it is not.
Yeah. You want to get down here, you can. Oh, did I drop my?
Can you mute yourself, whoever that is? I'm working on this, getting this movie back. Okay. Here we go.
Death is a fiction.
Okay, I'm not screen sharing with you anymore, right?
No.
Okay, here we go again. Here we go.
It doesn't exist. It can't occur in the experience of who you are, which is a sacred being known as your soul that lives past the end of what you call your physical life. When you're fully awake, you will find yourself never again mourning the death of another, not even for a moment. You might mourn your loss, but not their death. In fact, you'll actually celebrate their death by celebrating both the moments of love and joy that they shared with you and the fact that they're now continuing to live in the free and wondrous expression of their evolutionary process. You would likewise neither fear nor mourn your own death, and for precisely the same reason. How's that possible? How can we not mourn the death of another? Because you wouldn't be sad for something that's not true, that's not even happening. When was the last time you were really sad for a long period of time about something that didn't happen? I'm really sad that I fell down the stairs. But you never fell down the stairs. I know, but I'm sad anyway. You wouldn't do that. So why would you be sad because somebody has celebrated their continuation day? You see, the whole point of this particular lesson is to embrace the notion that death does not exist. Now, this is not a new age philosophy. This is not some kind of a new thought principle. Do you realize that every major religion on the face of the earth teaches us that death does not exist? Most of the major religions are built around the idea that the soul lives past the end of the body and the mind. Once you understand that, you don't find yourself in mourning over the death of another, but really you celebrate that they have celebrated their own continuation day. It's not a small thing because it can change and alter your entire experience of a loved one departing their physical expression. I know some people who have mourned the death of a loved one for a long time. I don't mean a week or two, or even a month or two, or even a year or two, but in some cases for a very long time. And it's sad. You know what's sad about that? What's sad about that is that the last person who would want them to stay in such mourning would be the person who's actually left their physical experience. That's the last thing they would want. I promise you. So, you will know you're fully awake when you fail to mourn the death of a loved one and fail to even mourn your own death. I remember my mom, she was a great example of this. My mother wasn't born into what we would call the New Thought community, you know, the New Age community. She was way before that. That was after her time. But she sure did understand what I'm telling you. And I recall in her life as she moved through the final months of her life, and everyone knew it was the final months of her life. I would come into her hospital room and I'd say, "Mom, gosh, I just feel so sorry." She said, "Sweetheart, don't feel sorry." She said to me words I'll never forget. "Dance on my grave. Promise me. Dance on my grave." And I promised her I would. And when she passed, I was sad, of course, for my own loss, of course. But I wasn't sad for her anymore because she was a living minister. She ministered to me. She ministered to my mourning before I could even have a chance to fall into it. And you know, I did what she asked. I really did. I went to the cemetery where she was buried. Very, very late one evening. Found her gravesite, looked at the gravestone, gave it a little kiss, looked around to make sure no one was watching, and did a little two-step, a little dance on her grave. This dance is for you. When you're fully awake, you dance through the moments that you once mourned. And you mourn no more.
Thank you so much, Rosalind.
You're welcome. Sorry for the intermission. Oh, we have something else playing. I gotta get rid of that
Your first book, Conversations with God, was such a phenomenal success.
now. All right, it's gonna
What
take
do
me a
you think
minute.
it was about that book that was so irresistible for people?
I think people saw.
Okay. I just want to ask, does anyone have any thoughts while watching? Anything come up for you at all?
Absolutely. I loved it. You know, I'm from a Puerto Rican family, so we party a lot, maybe too much sometimes. And my mother was dying from lymphoma in the hospital, and we were winding down. And my sister came out from New York so she could help me. And I remember my mother saying that, and I thought she had lost her mind. She says, when I go, I want you to put on some salsa, and I want you to dance your you-know-what off. I said, Mom, come on. She says, no, Papi, I want you to dance. I'm going home. And I thought she was crazy until I met you guys.
Thank you, Rico. Is there anyone else?
Rafi, go ahead, Rafi.
Yeah, I just was reminded of when my mother left her body. She was 102 and 7 months old, almost 103. And she was in pretty good shape. She had a woman caretaker for the last few weeks of her life. But one morning, the caretaker said, one morning she went in to wake her up and see if she wanted coffee. And my mother woke up, looked around, and she said, that'll do it. Or words to that effect. She closed her eyes and she was gone. I mean, she had absolutely no compunction about, well, I've been here long enough and now it's time to move on. And when I heard that story, I thought, well, that's typical of my mom. She lived on her own terms and she went on her own terms. You know, I learned a very, very valuable lesson, because when my son went, around the same time, the first thought that occurred to me was that he's freer now than he's ever been. And that kind of stuck with me. I mean, I still talk to him almost every day because, I mean, there's only the universe. You can't be the universe and outside. So where are you going to go? You can't go anywhere. You just move on to the next whatever, astral plane or whatever it's called. But this whole body thing, the ego concept of I'm a body, I was born, I'm going to live a while, I'm going to die. It's a fact that it's not true. It just simply isn't true. And the more that that's inculcated in me, the more peace that I find everywhere. So I just wanted to share that.
That's beautiful.
Thank you so much for that, Rafi.
Someone else have their hands up. Was that you, Lynn? Yeah.
Yeah, I talk a lot, so I don't want to take everybody else's time too. But I had 3 experiences that were right on the money. I once officiated a funeral for my best friend's mother, and I knew she was standing there watching the whole thing. I don't know if she knew it was her funeral or not, but she wasn't in that box. And the second experience I had was when I was younger, I used to say to my mother, please let me know you're okay. And my sister-in-law called me. I was at one of John's things, and my sister-in-law called, and my mother died, and he made a whole circle to send her good trip. And I was on the subway and I had this vision of her. When my mother died, she was in a wheelchair. She was frail. She had Alzheimer's, but she was dancing with dark hair. And the third experience I had, this really blew me away. When my best friend passed, and he didn't go anywhere. And it's so wonderful when you think of someone that is still here. You could think of the love, not being sad for them leaving. I'm very grateful I couldn't see it that way.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lynn. When you said, John, go ahead, John.
Okay, I'd like to, I know I talk a lot too, Lynn, but I think.
We love talking. We love talking. We're encouraging everyone to talk.
Oh, thank you. I want to celebrate something too. I got a grave to dance on today. And it's an awareness that I got to say it. And it's awareness about victimhood and where that originates and the grief around it, because I never realized it until today. I got an awareness and a knowledge and an education relative to the human sacrifice of a victim. And I thought, like you said, Dov, I'm never upset for the reason I think. My victim stories have always got names and people attached to them, but I never realized until today, my victim story started at conception. And it started with this memory of this victim, of this human sacrifice, that an ego mourning. And honestly, it's the first day of the rest of my life. And I'm just privileged to be here, Rosalyn, with your story of dancing on the graves, and the grave of my story that was the biggest bunch of bullshit, and that's been exposed, and I'm so grateful for that. And I just love that I'm here to share that with you, exposed to my true self. All of that story is in contrast to the very thing you said. Who and what am I?
It's beautiful, John. It's so important that you're claiming it, because we can have these moments, and when we keep them to ourselves, we somehow forget them. But when we speak them out loud, we're claiming it, and that reticular activating system will keep on showing you how you are right in what you experienced and in what how you interpreted it. You have a knowing today that is not who and what you are. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that, John. Yeah. If you look at what the Course is really saying about this life, what the Holy Spirit sees this world as, how I see this world, it's a classroom. It's a place where you come to learn lessons. Lesson 193, all things are lessons God would have me learn, all things. So, obviously the loss of somebody that's very close to you. I was married for 40 years. I must say, being married for 40 years to Suzanne was so comforting. And when she left, I did mourn. And even after I heard from her, after I asked Suzanne, can you give me a sign of your presence? And a few minutes later, I heard in my mind's, in her voice, I am happy. And I remember that in our marriage vows, which I made 40 years ago with John Mundy, he married us as a Methodist minister. The actual vows is, let us commit our relationship to remember and be committed to the idea that we are one. That was our wedding vows. We are one. And I looked, and I have the wedding vows on my wall here. I said, wait, if I wrote that 40 years ago, of course we're one. 40 years later, you think we're less than one? Obviously, we're still one. So, yes, you do miss the person, but that's always in the past. Oh, I miss the person, but you can bring yourself right into the present. That's why we call our group Join Us Tuesdays for Present Happiness, because you can only appreciate and enjoy the present happiness now, in this ever present now. And yes, your mind does fall back, of course, like when I'm riding along the road and I will go to a restaurant that she and I used to go to, I think of her, but that's like a momentary thing. You can just snap right back into being here now. Go ahead. I'm losing my voice. Go ahead, Rosalind.
That was beautiful, just beautiful. I have a little story to tell you about my mother. She was living in our house and we had a caregiver with her, and her body stopped working and the nurse came and said that she was dead. Now, my mother had a very, very cold body type, like not emotionally, but physically. She had always cold hands, and I have the same, always cold. Often you see me all like this with a scarf and so on around my neck, because even in summer, I'm always cold. So she died, and something told me to ask the caregiver to leave. And I got in bed with her. A few of you know this story. And she was burning up. There was not anything cold about her. Every part of her skin was soft. So I started to talk to her and to thank her for my life and whatever else I had to say. And then I put people on the telephone that didn't know she was going to be passing, and she held my hand back. Her fingers held onto my hand. She was clearly not dead in the usual sense of the word dead. Her heart had stopped. And for 2 hours, she was hot. We had everybody talking to her. And then I started getting concerned that she would be conscious when the people came with the body bag to take her to the mourning house, let's call it. And so I said, Mom, they're going to be coming for you soon, and we're going to follow your wishes and place you next to Dad. So you probably should go now. Like that. Cold, scalp hard, rigor mortis setting in, just like that. Make of that story what you will, but it doesn't end with the heart beating or not.
The whole course is about I am not a body. Of course, because we believe that we're a body, that's why death seems to be so fearful. If I'm a body, but that's like saying I am my suit of clothes, or I am my car. When your car gets old, you trade it in for a new model. When your suit of clothes is not fashionable anymore, you got holes and patches on it, you get a new suit of clothes, you get a new dress. So in order to attend this school, this is a classroom. There's no two ways about it. This is a classroom. I just want to read from the last chapter, the last section is called Choose Once Again. Trials or lessons that we're learning are but lessons that you fail to learn, presented once again. So where you made a faulty choice before, you can now make a better one, and thus escape all the pain that what you chose before has brought to you. So we are in a classroom, and all the people in your life are the people that are teaching you the lesson that you came here for. Obviously, the people that you're very friendly with, they're not really teaching you any real lessons. The people that you're feeling very uncomfortable with, that's where your lessons are. As Ken Wapnick would say, if you really want to do this course on the fast track instead of at a snail's pace, hang out where you don't feel so comfortable. That's where your lessons are. That's where you're getting triggered. And I say, of course, be grateful for your triggers, because they reveal the underlying mistaken beliefs, which are really your judgments against yourself or against another. And that's why forgiveness looks at those judgments and realizes that they're not real. Forgiveness doesn't do anything, but by not reacting to the judgment, by seeing that it's just a thought and it doesn't mean anything, it doesn't breed more judgments, more problems. So forgiveness steps back and does nothing, and that releases you from that judgment or that thought, so it's not there for you anymore. Are there any thoughts on any of this at all?
That's amazing. That's amazing, Dov. Thanks a lot.
Okay. And as far as forgiveness, Amy Anderson gives a class on Mondays, which is done over at ACIM Gathers Zoom. It started at 7:30, Amy? Yeah, 7:30 on Monday. At 7, I'm sorry, at 7 o'clock Eastern time on Mondays. I know that Rico is part of the group now, and we have about 6 or 7 people in the group. Please join us, and this only basically on forgiveness, or whatever the course says about forgiveness, with one other addition. She teaches in the second half of the hour on Ho'oponopono, and she does that. I'm sorry, please forgive me, I love you, and thank you. Not with another body, not with another person. She does it with God. And it's the most amazing experience. I just want to share that with you.
Amy, can you put your link in the chat? Or Dov can do that. Amy, I would love to hear if you had a response to the 5-minute movie.
Yeah, I absolutely loved it. I was present when my sister passed and when my dad passed, and shortly after my mom passed, and they definitely were not a body, that's for sure. You can just feel that spirit that's in them, like you were talking about, Rosalyn. That the body is what's left as a residue of the spirit that we all are. And it just becomes so clear as we study and learn more and more principles about this idea of oneness. Obviously, if we are all one, we can't have millions and millions of bodies. So this light that we are will return to the grand light that we all are.
I love that. So pretty. Yeah.
I absolutely loved that, the film that you showed. I feel like Neale Donald Walsh did a great job of explaining exactly the idea, the principle that as one and as an eternal being, that it's a celebration day. I am starting an officiant course for celebrations of life next week. So I'm definitely going to be taking some pearls of wisdom from that film into that course. Thank you.
Yes. When my daughter Melissa passed, for the first, I don't know how long, I would hear her voice. And I think I may have shared that when it was her first birthday time, when she was no longer here in form, I said to her, how am I going to celebrate your birthday without you? And she said, well, you could just celebrate my ascension. And that wasn't a thought I could have come up with at that point. I was too sad. Yeah. Thank you, Amy. That's beautiful. Franca and Robin, I'm wondering if you had any reactions to the movie. I know you, so I can call on you.
No, Robin, I loved it, but I wasn't there when my mom passed almost 10 years ago. I was grieving, but I did remember she was unconscious and I told her to move on. I didn't want her to linger. So I certainly believed in an afterlife, but I did miss her. And afterwards I grieved, but I know it's because I continued with the stories. You know how you teach when things come up, when the emotions or the feelings come up, we don't have to add paragraphs and so on, but I was doing that then. And I wouldn't do that now.
Yeah.
And I'm so grateful for that phrase, eye awareness, because it sort of stops me in my tracks. It's like letting go of the tug of war rope, but sometimes you don't realize that you're still, pulling. But eye awareness, for some reason, it just stops me. It makes me pause. And then I realize, where am I? Where's my location? Am I aligned with ego, or am I aligned with spirit or oneness? So I really want to thank you for that.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing. That was beautiful. Robin, yeah, thank you.
I'll just add to that, since being in A Course in Miracles, slowly and more deeply do I understand about death. And it certainly feels much different from the way we all grew up thinking about. And I also find that birth and death seem to bring us closest. Or for me, my experience is that there's a baby being born or someone dying. There's where I've just felt the most closest to God, and have been able to, it's palpable. Yeah. And now being close to God is becoming more palpable just because I'm here with you guys. And I would just say to think about, I wonder in the next, I'm kind of the generation who's going to be dying now. I mean, all my elders are gone and there's this waiting for when my generation, and how can I can do it in a celebrating or
Celebratory.
Yes, thanks. Way. I don't want to be weird about it, but I know that the peace that will be within me will be because I'm celebrating, and hopefully I can extend that in a way that will be helpful to others, truly helpful. So thank you for this conversation. I'm actually going to go to a grieving circle with some really special dear ones in my life, and we're going to do a fire grieving, but we're going to pay attention to our ancestors. So this is really interesting that this is coming up tonight. And on Friday evening, I will be with people, not on Zoom, but at a lovely meeting house, which is where I go to Quaker meeting. And I don't like to talk, but if you get me started, I think I'll just stop right there.
No,
that's great.
Thank you,
Robin.
It's all it's coming together very sweetly. So thank you.
And you have so much to share, Robin.
I know, but I don't like
No,
to.
but take back the but.
And yes, and
Let's
it makes
just say, I
hard.
know, period. I know, period.
Yes.
Yes, I know, period. I have a lot to share. Thank you.
John, go ahead. Yeah.
Don't deny us the gift of receiving your love, please.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. John,
I just wanted to jump in because when Dov was talking there, and I just said that was awesome. It deserves more than that, because when you're talking, Dov, about it's counterintuitive to recognize that when my doo-doo is up, that's my big lesson. And so I really want to thank Franca too, because she's saying exactly it's time to pause. When the shit hits the fan, this is a time for me to pause and realize, here's my learning opportunity. Here is my growth opportunity. Here is what I'm all about. I don't have to run to with all my friends on wherever they are. I'm right in the middle of it now, my lesson. So I wanted to say thank you for that, Dov. It's more than just say that was awesome. That was what I got from you. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you, John. I want to reiterate. I just put up on the chat again. It says, this is the one fixed, unchangeable belief of the world, that all things in it are born only to die. This is regarded as, quote, the way of nature. We all accept it. It's the way of nature. People are born, someone comes into the world, and somebody's leaving the world, usually at the same time. What that reminded me of, I don't know how many heard today. If you do know who Judy Scutch is, how many people know Judy? Yeah, she passed away today. She was 91 years old. Judy is the woman who's really responsible for having the Course in Miracles published. We were all asked to say something. The only thing that I could really say is thank you, Judy, so much, because she came into Helen's life. She was the perfect person to come into Helen's life, just like Ken Wapley was the perfect person to come in. But she said to Helen, how many books should we publish for the first publishing? And the story goes, she said, 6 books. She says, 6 books? He said, yeah. She says, how many people do you think want to read about a course in which they don't even exist? But of course, thanks to her and her husband, they run Foundation for Inner Peace, which published the books, at least the one that I bought back in 1977. And they were the only publisher for the next almost 30 years. And so she just passed. She was 91 years old and led a wonderful life, just a wonderful life.
Wow.
In fact, she was going to be doing a thing this coming Thursday. I was talking to Amy between 5 and 7. I was going to take it. It was going to be on forgiveness. And obviously they probably will obviously cancel it out.
Now she was doing a podcast with, do you know who?
Yeah, well, with Diane Gusick, I think, and Anita Boyne. Yeah, it was a podcast from 5 to 7 on Thursday, and it was right in the middle of Amy's class, I think. Yeah.
Oh.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. The other thing I just want to mention is we're getting towards the end. John Mundy, of course, is right back. He's on again tonight. You're invited. That's the Zoom link to John's meeting. And this Sunday, he's going to have Diederik Walsack. Most of you know who Diederik is. I love Diederik. He's a great teacher. And they already have 200 people signed up for this thing. They aren't charging any money on this thing on this Sunday. Diederik Walsack is a guest of John Mundy. You have to go to miraclesmagazine.org to get the link to go there. But this is probably the same link, by the way. I'm sorry, it's probably the same link. It's John's link, and he's on at 8 o'clock, which means right after this you can go there. I'm going to go there myself.
Mm-hmm.
I know some of you go to bed a little bit early, Kathy. Love you. But on the other hand, I'll be there for the next hour and a half if you want to go there.
Thank you, Dov. And
Okay.
if anybody who hasn't spoken tonight would like to, you have an opportunity. We'd love to hear from all of you. If I don't know you personally, I hesitate to call on you, but I would love to hear from you. All right. I don't want to pressure anybody.
Is there any last questions, thoughts, anything at all on this evening?
Yeah, I got something extra. I just want to thank Miss Franca and Miss Robin for putting a little icing on the cake. I appreciate you. The other people I know, I really appreciate your input. Thank you.
Thank you, Rigo. Suzanne?
I just want to thank you for addressing that. That answered a lot of my questions about grief tonight. So I appreciated everyone's thoughts. Thank you so much.
Thank
Well,
you.
it just happened to be the very subject that we were going to be talking about tonight. So
I know, it was my luck.
yeah. Do you have any single idea that you want to maybe talk about with regard to grief? Because if it came up, it must be, in your consciousness now. Is there anything you want to share on it?
I just think that, we said so much tonight that sort of epitomizes my day. I've been having a lot of problems with my eyes, and I had to drive 5 hours today to see a doctor. And I just think it's interesting that I did all of that and I still made it to tonight as I'm thinking about, what it means. My eyes have been really bad and what all of that means. Thank God I'm still driving. But I think the other thing that happens to me is that a lot of times I am alienated from my family. And all of that came about because of my parents' death. And so a lot of times it's like a wave will come across me. of remembrance, and it'll be so painful. And I know that that's my ego bringing me to places, because the ego likes to keep me in constant turmoil, which isn't hard to do for me. And so it's sort of I try to remember it and say that was then, this is now. So it's constant with me. And all of this was good because it gave me more things to sort of remind myself of when it happens.
I'm very glad you brought that up, mainly because grief and mourning is not only because someone passed away. I'm thinking of a client of mine. She thought that her sister said something to her, and she didn't talk to her for 20 years. 20 years.
That's me.
Oh,
I haven't talked to my sister in 17 years.
And during all this time, there was the thought that the other person didn't like them, and so you got to remember, the Course in Miracles is about the recognition that in this world we believe in separation. We actually believe that we can be alienated from God, from our family, from our brothers and sisters, and the separation, or the belief in separation, is unreal. It's made up, because what God creates is one. I mean, if you're familiar with my book, it's called Into Oneness. My ministry is called One Mind. Rosalyn's whole work is about remembering our oneness. You want to remember that the Course in Miracles is really about accepting the atonement. It says your only responsibility in this world is to accept the atonement for yourself. Accepting the atonement is to recognize that our entire belief of separation never really happened. We're dreaming of a separation, but the separation never happened. We never really left the mind of God. As he says, an idea cannot leave its source. He says, why wait for heaven? You never really left. Heaven is an awareness of perfect oneness. What is one is not two. This is a world of two-ness. That's where you get the idea of duality or non-duality. This Course in Miracles is a teaching in non-duality. There's no two-ness, there's only oneness. But we have a belief system, and I was married to someone, and they're not here anymore. So, I've lost somebody. Well, whether you lost through someone passing, dropping their body, as they say in India, people don't die in India. You drop your body, and you're always here. Ramana Maharshi was about to die, and his disciples said, "Oh, Master, please don't leave us." He said, "Where would I go? Where would I go? You don't leave. You're always here."
Love that. On that note, let's take that with each other. Where would we go? We're always with each other. Let's take each other through our week and remember each other in that vein. Thank you, everybody. Good night.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
How you doing, Rafi? Good to see you, man.
Good night, everybody. Good night.
Good night. Thank you.
Good night. Good night. Good night.